There's a hymn that I'm sure many of you here today know very, very well. In fact, it may actually be one of your favorite hymns. It's usually played at funerals, but Maestro, about 2 weeks ago, we actually sang it here at Mass, I remember, because I was quite impressed that we're singing it. It's an old-time hymn called Amazing Grace. And Amazing Grace reminds us of God's great power to restore, to revive, to bring back to life, to bring us home. The son of the widow of Zarephath in the first reading and the son of the widow of Nain are both restored to life. In the first reading, the great man of God, Elijah, calls upon God's power to come down upon the young man, and he rises. In the gospel, Jesus raises the son of the widow of Nain with a mere word, arise. A little bit about the status of widows in the ancient world. It's not like it is today. Most of the time, unless there's a prenuptial agreement, most of the property of the dead husband goes to the wife. It was never that way in the ancient world. In fact, the Hebrew word for widow means unable to speak, the voiceless one. And from the Greek, they're all connected to the word to be forsaken. So in the ancient world, if a widow was not able to either A, remarry, B, have a son who would take them into their home, or C, have a brother-in-law who would take them in, they were essentially destitute. Their life was without meaning. They were sort of like a dead woman walking. That's a way of background to make you understand how destitute, how dire the circumstances were for both of these women. In fact, in today's vocabulary, we would say they both were at the end of their rope. Did you listen closely to the first reading today? Did something bother you? Hit your ears wrong? You see, the widow of Zarephath blames the presence of the prophet Elijah, that great figure from the book of Kings, for the death of her son. What's all that about? Did it bother you when you heard that? Well, there was an idea in the ancient world that if one was a sinner, and that's what this widow was doing by saying this, she was saying to Elijah, I know I'm a sinner, and you, man of God, have come into my home, and you've kind of put the light from above on us. And they believed that parents were punished in their children. In other words, for the sins of the parents, the children might be hurt. And so she blames the prophet Elijah for the death of her son. Then notice what Elijah goes through. 3 times praying, all kinds of contortions going over the body of the poor boy, that kind of thing, to call the power of God down to restore the son to his widowed mother. So the story in the first reading has been told to debunk that idea that it's God who punishes parents in their children. The story of the raising of the son of the widow of Nain is unique to the gospel according to Luke. It doesn't appear in Mark, Matthew, or John. And again is told by Luke to let the readers know how much God cares for the voiceless and the forsaken. And notice what Jesus does. The text tells us he took pity on the woman. Now, you all know from the time that you come to Mass on Sundays and from your reading of the Bible outside of coming to Mass, that very often in the Gospels, Jesus required an act of faith on the point of the person to be healed or by friends. Remember the time the friends cut the hole in the roof and let the paralytic down? And it was because of their faith that Jesus cured the paralytic. He doesn't ask for an act of faith of this woman. Very different. Why might that be? Well, I came across a theory. And the theory says that Jesus had pity on this woman because he was thinking about his own mother. You see, soon he would suffer and die on the cross. And his mother would go through all the pangs and grieving of his loss. And so he felt pity on this woman and restored her son because of his own mother, Mary. Then he does something very, very, very strange. He comes up to the casket and touches it. You know, when people came in contact with a dead person in the Jewish world, they were thought to be then made unclean. But Jesus does it anyway. And then he just says to the young man, "Arise." And the young man comes back to life. And he gives the young man back to his mother. Now, with what I told you about the status of widows in the ancient world, I'd ask you a question. Which person was more restored to life? The dead son or the widow herself? We come today to this Mass to receive life too. We come here to receive Jesus in the Eucharist. You and I, in the modern world, are meant to be other Christ to those around us. You and I are meant to continue the mission of Jesus, his mission of pity and compassion to our world. You and I are meant to look around and see the sufferings and the needs of others, and we're meant to reach out and do something about it, even when people don't understand what we're doing or don't approve of it. We have to identify that need and then try to do something to take care of it for the widows and the orphans and the destitute, the voiceless ones, and the forsaken. And here at St. Anne's, we can do this in many, many, many ways. Millions of them. But I'm not going to talk about millions. I'm going to talk about two. One of them is our St. Vincent de Paul Society. And there's going to be an announcement. John Vetter and friends will be in the narthex after Mass trying to get donations to help somebody. And that's what they do. If you didn't know it, every month, by about the 4th or the 5th of the month, they've run out of their budgeted money to help people. And we help anybody and everybody that we can within our zip code, of our area, of our parish, most of whom are not Catholic, some of whom now are becoming more and more Catholics and more members of our parish because of a financial situation in our country. But they run out of money. They are looking for people to help them, help stock their food cabinets, help go out to visit in the homes to see the great need that these people have to pay their gas and electric bill or whatever else it happens to be. So we can help take care of the voiceless and the forsaken and the widows, etc., by supporting the St. Vincent de Paul Society, either by being an active volunteer in it, they need those, or by giving to it. And our poor boxes, the money for the calendars, and we usually have a special collection, and they take individual donations as well. That's a great way to do that. Now, last night, we had the squires here. Those young men are kind of working their way towards the Knights of Columbus. It was their 10th anniversary of this Squire Circle. And Joe Birch, Channel 5 News himself, was here in our congregation last night, and he was their guest speaker at the dinner afterwards. They've done wonderful things, as you know, collecting the turkeys at Thanksgiving, going to the VA and bringing toiletries and things like that to the veterans, and just so many other things that they do. The squires are young people working their way into adulthood, following in the footsteps of Jesus. So today I would ask you to meditate on this week. How are we being other Jesuses to those in the world? How are we identifying needs and helping to satisfy those needs for the voiceless and the forsaken in our world? What are we doing to become another Christ to those around us?